You're listening to The State of Work, the podcast by Lanu. The State of Work is about finding your place in the changing world of work as an individual or an organisation. In each episode, we dive into some of the benefits and limitations we face when it comes to remote and flexible work. We discuss how we work, how we hire and manage people, and how we live in this increasingly global workplace. I'm your host, Maddie Duke, and in this week's success story, we get a peek into the life of a freelancer. Sandra Redlich is a freelance marketing consultant, copywriter, translator, and project manager. Originally from Germany, she's permanently settled in the beautiful city of Melbourne, Australia. Sandra spoke about what it's been like to establish herself as a freelancer in a new country, some of the challenges of working as a freelancer, and she shared some advice for people just starting out their freelance career. Hi, Sandra. Thanks so much for joining me on The State of Work.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sandra, you are originally from Berlin and you're currently based in Melbourne. How long have you been based in Melbourne for?
Yeah, I've been in Melbourne since, I think, last year, February, but in Australia for a little bit longer. Now I'm thinking, which year do we have? The last year kind of just flew past. No, I think that's right. Like coming up on 2 years now.
Great. And so tell me what do you do? What do you do for work and also what brought you to Melbourne?
Yeah. So, I'm a freelance marketing consultant, but mainly also copywriter and translator. It's always a bit funny. There's so many descriptions for what you do because I kind of also do social media and some project management and just a little bit of everything. But I guess the main thing is copywriting and translating. And I do that for both German clients, because as you said, I'm from Berlin originally, and also Australian clients or international clients in general. And I'm in Melbourne because, my partner is Australian. We met in Germany actually. So he was working over there and we met, and I kind of decided together that we might give it a try over here. And
fantastic.
Yeah, I did the move.
That's awesome. So, well, today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about both living in Melbourne and working for clients around the world, and also about freelancing in general. So maybe we'll start with how long have you been freelancing for? Were you already freelancing before you made the move to Australia?
Yeah, I was already freelancing in Germany. So I started off doing it as kind of like a side hustle while I was still full-time employed. And then it kind of took over. But the goal always was at that point to do it full-time. So I've been doing it for 4.5 years now, coming up on 5. Yeah.
Great. And you've made that huge move within that time, which is pretty amazing. What would you say your biggest challenge has been over that last 4 years?
Yeah, my biggest challenge at first was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, because I kind of, in the beginning, even I have a hard time describing the one thing that I do, because I like to do a lot of different things. And that's the flexibility of not only where and when you work, but also what you work.
Absolutely.
Is a big thing that I like and that drew me to freelancing. So that was a big challenge in the beginning, and I still sometimes struggle with that. Because I also get a little bit excitable and I see other people doing things, and then I'm like, I want to do that as well. That sounds really cool.
So relatable.
But I think one of the biggest fears concerning the move was if I was going to be able to keep my German clients, because obviously starting off in Germany, most of my clients were German back then. And I thought, the time zone difference, and just people might be scared even just seeing a foreign address on the invoice, or, how do I do it with the currency, and all of these questions that you ask yourself. So that was the biggest fear that I had, which actually turned out to be not that bad at all.
Would you be able to step us through how you ended up navigating that? Like how did your German clients take the change when you decided to move? And have you been able to manage the time zone reasonably well, or has it been a problem?
Yeah, the time zone has actually been not a problem at all. I found the number one thing is just open communication, just letting people know where you are and what works for you, and then just planning your day around it a little bit. So now all my meetings and my calls are just in my evening time. Then, of course, there is the funny difference with whenever there's daylight savings in Australia and the change of time zone in Germany. So right now we're 8 hours apart, which is good for me. It will be 10 come our summer and your winter. So that'll make it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
But that has, yeah, as I said, not been difficult at all, because if you communicate it openly, people generally, the response I get is people are very excited, and they still get, super excited about, oh, I'm speaking to someone from the other side of the world. I get that a lot still. So it's more happiness about it. And in terms of, the making the move, because there was a transitional phase where I was still registered in Germany with all my business expenses and everything. And then when I actually switched to being registered here, not in Germany, here being Australia, I just took that as an opportunity to get in touch with my clients and kind of say, hey, just to let you know, my invoicing address will change, but that's the only thing that changes for you. Yeah.
So establishing yourself as a freelancer in a new country, are there any ways that how have you connected locally with other businesses and freelancers in Australia or in Melbourne?
Yeah, that's actually been one of the biggest or still ongoing challenges, definitely, because my start in Melbourne kind of coincided with the start of the pandemic. And we had a pretty tough lockdown at the start of it, 2 lockdowns, and it was just really restricting, and there was just no way of mingling. So I did join some Facebook groups and did some LinkedIn researches to find other people. But that honestly didn't really lead to anything. And I've never been a person that works well in co-working spaces. I actually function quite well on my own in my home office. So that also never really interested me. So I'm only now kind of starting to get out there and make more connections. And that kind of just came naturally. By putting yourself out there and just having conversations. Sometimes it's really as easy as just letting someone know, oh, actually, I work in that field. And then I find a lot of times then people go, oh, I know someone who also works in marketing who does that. And then you start having conversations, and that's really valuable.
Yep. There is one, just to be completely transparent to the listeners, I'm actually from Melbourne originally and now living in Berlin. So coincidentally, Sandra and I have kind of swapped situations.
Places, yeah.
But if I can recommend to you and anyone listening from Australia, there's a fantastic freelance network group on Facebook called Freelance Jungle. Definitely check them out. So let's talk a little bit about clients. If I can ask you, what would your ideal client relationship look like?
That's difficult because you have so much to pick and choose from. But I think for freelancers, the one thing that's always kind of missing is security in money, in job and work time. So how much time you actually get to spend on working. Because I think a lot of times people, especially I find back home in Germany, people always associate being self-employed with working endless hours and being just flat out. And I mean, that's kind of a dream scenario if you have the amount of work and the clients to be at that point and just outsource work. But you have to get to that place at first. So my first 2 years, 3 years, it was really up and down. Also, depending on how much I actually put myself out there, because back in Germany also, I really didn't network that much or as much as I could have. So it kind of took a little bit of time to get established and to have that work. But an ideal client for me would be someone who's very transparent about how much they want to work with me and what they expect of me. Because I find a lot of times people tend to see freelancers as this amazing option to just have one task outsourced quickly. And a lot of times that is what it is, and I do that as well. But it's really awesome if you get to be part of a team a little bit more and get a little bit more insights. And you feel valued and that information is shared with you, because I think that's probably one of the biggest things is sharing information.
Yeah.
Because I find, especially as a copywriter, oftentimes you get a quick briefing. And I like short briefings. I don't like the 3-page PDF documents that much. But it's nice to get some feedback after as well. just in terms of how is the article performing? What were you actually looking to achieve with it? Are we achieving it? Is there anything I can take away from it in terms of change the headlines, or we would have liked a little bit more linking or a little bit more personable approach in the copy? So something that I can take away and learn from as well. So yeah, an ideal client would do that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Have you ever had to let go of a client, like resign or fire a client that just wasn't a good match?
Yeah, I've thought about it a couple of times. Both of the cases I did. No, now that I'm thinking about it, I did actually. Yes, I did do that. And there were a couple of times where I considered it or almost did it. A lot of times because of just the payment process being extremely difficult to handle, with a lot of reminders and just no replies, and you're just feeling like you're being ripped off, which has happened to me in the beginning as well, where you do perform work and then you never hear of them again, especially as a young freelancer or just starting out. You don't really know what to do, and I'm a little bit wary of that. I don't like weirdly enough, I don't like talking about finances with my clients too much in terms of, hey, where's my money? You just never like to remind people too much of that.
Yeah, it's interesting because as a freelancer, you're essentially running your own business. And in addition to the service and skill that you're actually providing for a client, you've got to bring all these other skills like managing clients and managing payments and having those conversations that may not have originally been part of your ideal kind of skill set. Absolutely. That's at least what I've found, and it sounds a little bit like that as well with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any rituals around, or like celebrations around finishing a new project, or any milestones along your freelance journey? And the reason I ask is partly because I know it can be really hard to build community, and when you're in an employment situation and you've got colleagues and you're celebrating together internally with everyone else in the office who's been working there together, as a freelancer, you're kind of a sole operator. And I think it can be really important to celebrate milestones for yourself. Is that something that you do?
Not actively. I think it's a really good point that you're bringing up, and I probably should do that more. One thing I have learned though is, and I need to do, like, actively remind myself to do it, is just to share with my friends and family what I'm doing and what I'm working on. Because a lot of times I get amazing feedback, and, you know, you get that celebration that you would usually have from coworkers. But I guess it's a little bit difficult sometimes to bring it up because it's hard to explain your work sometimes, especially to people who don't work in the industry. And then all the work you have to put into explaining it and kind of setting the framework to then go, hey, I did this amazing thing, and have an appropriate reaction, or the reaction you find appropriate, is a little bit difficult. But if you do break it down and make it more simple, I guess, the number one thing is people also just get excited if you're excited. So if you tell them, hey, I did this thing and it's really cool, they probably won't say, oh, I don't get it. Why is it cool? I've never heard of this. They'll just go. Yeah,
they're just like, I don't get it, but yay, well done you.
Exactly. And sometimes that's all you need, right? You just need someone, your cheerleader, to kind of celebrate with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of self-care tips or rituals around making sure that you don't burn out or overwork? Like you mentioned earlier about, there is a bit of I would say there's almost two views. Like, some people seem to think that freelancers are like in between jobs and not really doing anything. And then other people understand that with freelancing and self-employment, it's often more like you're actually never not working. If you're not working on client work, you're working on getting new clients and managing the admin side of your business. And it can really lead to burnout. And yeah, I wanted to ask about any preventative tips that you might have to share.
I think just planning your day is a very big thing for me. Routine, I guess, building a routine in a job that usually doesn't have a lot of routines. So now when I know, I have a lot of calls or meetings in the evenings, I'll make sure that there is a period in the afternoon where I'll just take 2 hours off, and just do things around the house, do a workout, or just do something that is good for me. Also, what's really helped is I have a dog. So every lunch break, we go for a walk for an hour. So that's become also a routine. And it really helps to just get yourself away from the computer. You're not even thinking about it. You're fully focusing on walking and being outside and interacting with your dog. So that's definitely helped, for me. And also planning my day around my own personal preferences, and not sticking so much to the 9 to 5 office hours that we all know, because I did find, or I still find that I feel like I'm expected to sit at my computer at 9 a.m., even though I don't have to, especially with the different time zone. People won't care if I sit at 9 or at 10 or 11 or at 7 in the morning. But actually,
one of the benefits to freelancing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I actually found that I work better in the mornings. I'm more, especially if I'm writing creative copy, that I'm way better in the mornings, and I tend to do more administrative work in the afternoons. So just planning my day around that and knowing that's how it works best for you, that really helps.
Awesome. So would you have any advice, or what advice would you have for someone that might just be starting out as a freelancer?
Yeah, actually, one of my good friends is kind of in the process of doing that. And we talk about it a lot, obviously, because she asks for advice. And I think people get overwhelmed by the amount of information that is out there and the country-specific regulations you have to meet. I know Germany especially can be very confusing with all of the paperwork and all of the administrative stuff that you need to do. So I think the number one advice would be just don't let that bring you down. Don't let that steal your dream of being self-employed, because it is easy to be crushed by that and just say it's easier to just stick with a normal job. And also don't think you can't do it. And don't think you can't do it by yourself, because I think a lot of people also tend to, but they see all this information and then they think they have to hire an accountant immediately and pay for this and pay for that service, and kind of like overwhelmingly, I'm not qualified for this, I need to outsource it. And I know that it is overwhelming, but you can figure it out, especially in the beginning. It does make sense to outsource certain things, and certain tools and software is super helpful, and it can actually really help you increase your productivity and spend time on the really important things. But I think you have to be a bit more aware and just have a little bit more experience to make these calls. So before you actually have ever worked for your first client, you don't need to download a expensive software that'll help you do your taxes, or I don't know, get a coach or any of these things. If you personally feel like that's what you need, that's obviously fine. But just from my experience, I think it's have a little bit of patience and just get started. Just start doing it. You learn so much by doing. You never stop learning. I'm still learning so much doing this work every day, and just embrace the chaos of it, I guess. At least in the beginning, because it'll be chaos.
Yes, that's great advice. Thank you. Thanks so much for that advice, and also for your time today, Sandra. It's been really, really nice getting a bit of an insight into what it's been like for you as someone who's moved internationally while building their freelance career. All the best to you, and thanks again so much for joining us on The State of Work.
Thanks for having me.
The State of Work is brought to you by Lano. Lano has a free all-in-one app to manage clients, track tasks, create invoices, and get paid on time. Register and send your first invoice today at lano.io. To read more about Sandra's freelance success story, head to podcast.lano.io. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on The State of Work.